Hi, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Can you hear me okay? Everything good on your end?
Everything's great. Sorry, I just got a new computer, so I didn't plan on oh, download all the things. And I was like, I just have it's Anyway, so my apologies.
No, you're cool. Thanks for doing the show. Thanks for reaching out as well. It means a lot.
Yeah, no problem. I'm excited.
So it's what time is it? Where are you at right now? Like where are you located?
I'm on the East Coast, so Boston area.
You've been there
So
your
it's
whole
9:30 here.
you've been there your whole life?
I've been in on the East Coast my whole life. I grew up in Maine, and then I lived in New York City for almost 7 years. And then during the pandemic, we moved to Massachusetts. My husband and I, and we had a baby. So
Ah, I got you. So kind of I really don't know where to start with this. But kind of so you are a voiceover actor. You've done commercials. You sent over your information and you were like, hey, I've been in these commercials and I was listening to them. I have heard a couple of those on TV. Are the ones like the makeup thing, the elf thing, and then the
yep.
Samsung, are those currently on like TV now showing? Because I've heard them pretty recently, I think.
Oh, really? Yeah, the Elf one I recorded. It was a few years.
Okay, so I see in your camera that is that at your house? You have like a recording, like an official recording studio at your house?
Yeah, I'm inside my booth right now.
Got you.
I I love it.
So do you like when you book a voiceover, whatever it may be, commercials, audiobooks, whatever, because you've done a
hmm
good bit of stuff. Is that kind of like you don't go into a professional studio? You kind of have one at your house on purpose?
So it's kind of both, especially with the pandemic and people not being able to go into studio for a little while. There was this push towards talent recording from home, and what they do is um they like kind of call in so they can hear you recording and direct you live, but you're in your own space. But I do also still go into studios as well. So I would say it's more of my stuff I record from home at this point, but I do still go in sometimes for various sessions. It depends on the client and what they're looking for. Certain jobs, I think it's easier for them to record all of the talent in one location because then the audio sounds more universal. They can kind of control all of that a lot more in their own space. So, like video games and animation, they tend to still like recording in studio, but commercial stuff, a lot of it records from home now, at least what I've seen, they have the option of like recording from home or recording in studio, which is nice.
So is it kind of, I can understand being comfortable like at your own home in your own studio, but kind of do you just prefer like to do it at home, or is it sometimes great just to get away?
I like both options. I I think that there's this like awesome energy that you get when you go into studio and you're around other creatives in person. I'm an extrovert, so like I love being around other people, but I'm also a new mom. And so sometimes the convenience of just being able to like pop in here for an hour and not have to commute somewhere, especially because sometimes the commute would be to New York, which is 4 hours from my house.
Mm.
So it'd be a whole day to record for like an hour or two, which I've done and I can do. And don't get me wrong, I love every opportunity I have to go back to New York because I very much miss it. But the convenience of being able to just pop in here and not need to get childcare because my husband can watch our son for, the hour or 2 hours or whatever that I'm in the booth. There's pros and cons to both. And I like having the option to do both.
You know, it's crazy the way technology has like advanced in the past. I mean, since 3 4 years ago, I can't imagine what it was like. How long have you been doing this? And I'll lead to kind of my point of the question.
Yeah. So I've been doing voiceover specifically off and on for 7 8 years now. A while, a long time. What
So
what year is it? Yeah, 8 years.
so what has kind of what has been some of the biggest technology booms and boosts that you've seen in 8 years? Because I'm pretty sure it's a lot.
Yeah, well, I would say the biggest thing that I've noticed is more on the like the ease with which to record from home. So in the past, it's been everything was in studio, and when I even first started, even auditions, a lot of the auditions were in person, and then things started to gradually shift to like auditioning from home, but then going into the studio for either callbacks or the actual recording session at the very least. And then now things, like I said, it's so much is from home. And because of that, the responsibility for the tech has increased for the talent, because before it was like I didn't really need to know a lot of the tech. Everybody else took care of that for me. I just had to show up and talk, and everything else happened on the back end. But now more and more responsibility is coming to me to like make sure my space sounds good, make sure that the audio is like normalized correctly, or that it's yeah, it's just more of the responsibility has come on me. So I'm not a super tech savvy person, but I've had to figure out, I mean, I'm not tech illiterate, but I wouldn't say that it's like my biggest strength. But I've had to kind of figure it out and piece things together as I've gone on and as I've had more experience in the industry, because it's shifted so much as far as who has to take on more of those roles.
In the beginning, when you realized you wanted to do this, what was the goal? To just like do different voices and be like Tom Kenny or Seth MacFarlane? What was it, or was it just I have this kind of cool sounding voice, I can just do a lot of commercials and stuff like that?
Honestly, I never had any of those thoughts. I fell into it. I completely fell into it. I'm an actor, and so I'd always been like a stage and on camera actor, and I still am an on camera actor. But I like, long story short, well, I won't actually. It's not going to be that short, but I'll tell you how I got into it in the
Go
first
ahead.
place.
We got an hour here. We're good.
Great. I'll fill it up with like half of the story. It's kind of cool. It includes San Francisco and a dog and all these random things you wouldn't think and have to do with voiceover. So after I graduated from college, I knew I wanted to move to New York City, but I had a couple summer jobs, and one of them landed me in San Francisco for 6 weeks. It was a short-term, like, subbing nannying job. The nanny I was replacing was just gone for a few weeks, so I was there. And I was like, cool, I'm in San Francisco. Like, I want to keep working on my craft. What acting classes are here that I can take while I'm in San Francisco? And the only class I found that would like the entire class would take place while I was there was a voiceover class. And I was like, okay, I like don't really know anything about voiceover. They don't teach it in school. Like I never even really thought of it as a piece of an acting career. Like obviously there are voiceovers, but it never occurred to me that those are actors that are doing it for whatever reason. So I was like, okay, cool, I'll sign up for this voiceover class. Like that sounds interesting and different. And I really liked it, but I didn't think that I would pursue it anymore. Of course, the teacher said to me, she's like, you remind me of a younger me. And I was like, ooh, like that feels so great. You're successful, like awesome. So I asked my parents for a microphone for my birthday that year. And I moved to New York like the week of my birthday. So it came to New York with me. And I just dabbled around with it. I played with things here and there and just kind of got comfortable with it. I did like one-off random gigs that kind of fell my way.
I want to stop you real quick before you continue.
Yeah.
Because I got a question about that. So when you said you got a microphone, what kind of microphone does a professional voiceover have, and how much would that usually cost for people that's not really too familiar with it?
Sure. So I have a couple different microphones at this point, actually. The one I'm speaking with right now is an AT2020 USB Plus. And that's just a USB microphone that plugs right into your computer. So it's the lowest, it's like USB microphones are the lowest barrier to entry. I think they're perfectly acceptable when you're just getting started. They're really easy to use. You just plug it in and you're good to go. I've got a little, pop filter on it as well to stop any the hard plosive sounds, which are those like P's and B's that can make the microphone go bah and it loses its mind.
Right. A pop filter
so I started with
a pop filter for those that don't really know what that is. So let me take my pop filter off. This is kind of what it would sound like. That's what you would get, but with a pop filter, you barely get a little bit of feedback from that puh and that buh that you would use.
Exactly. So I would say that like a mic, a pop filter, and I mean a computer, but most people already have computers anyway, and headphones, which again, most people have headphones anyway, are the kind of minimum that you need to get started. That's what I got started with just a USB microphone. I think I started with a Blue Yeti, also perfectly fine for getting started. But then I got I like my AT 2020. But then I also have for more professional gigs, like when I'm recording a commercial, I have a XLR microphone, which plugs into oh my gosh, all of my words have lost. I've lost my words right now.
It's like
it
one of
plugs
those,
into another.
Yeah, it's like an ALX, like a big circle, and it plugs into the. I don't know the name, but yeah, I got you.
Yep. What's it called? Well, I have a Focusrite Scarlett Solo, like Gen 3. I forget what it's called. It'll come to me randomly. But anyway, so that is considered like the XLR mics, which require this other device to connect, are more of the industry standards. And there's such a range of microphones there. I mean, you could spend anywhere from probably $200 to $250 is like the cheaper versions to like thousands of dollars for the more expensive microphones. I have kind of a mid-range mic for that purpose, because if they want a super expensive one, they can just bring me into the studio where they already have it. I didn't want to I already spent a lot of money on the booth. So the mic was, I got the one that my agents had us talk to a lot of different like sound studios when everyone went remote, and they were giving us a lot of advice on which microphones to get. And I just got one of the ones that they recommended. But yeah, so I think you can get started with a pretty minimal investment, and then it kind of goes up from there as you get more experienced. There's somebody that I love. Her name is Denise Duffield Thomas. She's a money mindset coach, has nothing to do with voiceover, but she talks about this idea of incremental upgrades, which is like gradually upgrading anything in life, whether it's your life, your equipment is what I'm getting at here. So I've just incrementally upgraded my equipment over the years as I've gotten bigger gigs, as I've, had more success or started recording more from home, just gradually invested more and more. Okay.
So your parents bought you a microphone. Now you're set. What's next in the story?
So fast forward a couple years, I dabbled around. I did some audiobooks. I would say audiobooks are kind of like the lowest barrier to entry, just because there's a lot of opportunity out there for audiobooks. And you can do what's called a royalty share, where it doesn't actually cost the author anything up front to get the book recorded. You just get a cut of the sales. So I dabbled with that, not really making much money, if any money, but just kind of doing it for experience and getting a little bit on the back end as things sold, if they sold. Hindsight's 2020. I could have been a little more strategic with the books that I picked, but to be honest, I literally was just thinking of it as like practice. And so
but it's also,
that's what I did.
It's not only just practice. It's also a good resume holder where you're like, look, I've not done anything. I haven't done anything major, but at least I do have some experience in reading books, because I listen to audiobooks a lot of the times, and it's like you have to be so spot on. You can't, if you miss a word, you have to go back, and it's crazy.
Oh yeah, the recording an audiobook, like the final audio that you hear is not like, they did not read that straight through in one take. That would be so hard. There's a lot of editing, and that's how I learned some of the editing stuff as well, because when you're doing an audiobook, you are the person that is not just. You can either hire somebody else to edit the audio for you, or you can do it yourself. And I went the do it myself route because I wasn't making money on these. So I wanted to figure out the tech behind it. So I figured out, dabbled with audiobooks, did a couple other random things. And then I got a dog. Um, Fast forward like a few years. Um, and my dog had severe separation anxiety, like really bad. Crying at the door, scratching. He's a rescue. Like scratching at the door, barking. I lived in an apartment building, so I couldn't have him like crying and howling and scratching all day. I could get evicted for that. So I was like, oh no, I can't leave my apartment. Like while I'm training him, it was a very gradual process of training him to be okay alone at home. And I was like, what do I do? Like, how do I make money? I need to bring in income and I can't leave my house. So I leaned into voiceover. I got my demo together. I recorded it myself from home. And I started booking jobs. And right around that same time, I had a on-camera agent at the time, and my on-camera, like the agency opened a voiceover department, and I had just booked a voiceover job on my own that I ran through my on-camera agent for her to like negotiate the contract for me. So they remembered that I had just booked a voiceover job, and they were like, great. And I got grandfathered into the voiceover department, and I got an agent. Like it was very serendipitous. And the rest is history. That was how I really got like jump started the voiceover stuff, was getting my demo together on my own and coupling that timing wise with my agency opening a voiceover department.
So
thanks to my dog.
when was it in your career where you actually you don't have to say, I'm just curious. When was it in that you started making money doing voiceovers? Because you mentioned in the audiobook you were making very little or none at all. When was it that you were like, okay, maybe I can do this and live a pretty decent life?
I would say, I mean, I started making money right away, and I think it was when but I never leaned into it. And so it wasn't like I was actively pursuing it really hard and wasn't making any money. I would say anytime I've really put my mind to it, I've been able to bring in income. It's just a matter of if it's a priority to bring in money that way versus a different way. But when I got my demo together myself and started booking jobs like almost immediately, and then couple that with like audiobooks being a pretty like decent, steady form of income if you want them to be, if you have the right tools to like market yourself and actively go after clients on your own rather than just waiting for them to come to you. That's probably when I was like, I could lean into this more and like make this be a really solid side income for me, or even more than a side income.
I wonder, because you see like these major movie stars like Ryan Reynolds, Dwayne Johnson, Kevin, whoever you want to say, they're like 1 year they'll have 3 or 4 movies out, which means they've probably been working on 4 different movies at one time. I wonder, you could do that pretty much the same with voice acting work, but is it easier that way than having to be on set all the time? I'm pretty sure it would be, and if it would, kind of explain that process of doing multiple voiceover projects at once.
So it depends on the voiceover job. But like last week I was working on 2 different jobs at the same time. So it depends on the job. If it's like an animation or commercial or video game, those are really controlled. The timing of the scheduling is really controlled by the producers. So they tell you when they need you, they book you for that time. You don't really get to be like, no, I'd rather do this time. Like you go when they tell you they need you. But with audiobooks, unless you're working with a publisher, like a big publisher like Random House or something like that, if you're working with an independent author who's going to independently publish their audiobook, which is what I've done, it's on your schedule. So I tell them, I'll get the audiobook to you by X date, but when I record is entirely up to me. So I try not to have multiple audiobooks going at the same time because that's a lot of character voices to remember. And I worry I would like mix up a character from one book with the other. So I prefer to like finish one book before I start the next one. But that doesn't mean I'm not talking to multiple authors at once. It just means I'm probably not getting, once I'm getting one author audio, I get the audio to them pretty quickly and then move on to the next one. But yeah, I've done like also the thing with animation, to talk about that, and video games. They kind of have somewhat of a similar, at least in my experience so far, have a somewhat similar timeline. It's like you might record one day and then record another day like 3 months later or 2 weeks later. It's not unlike making a movie where you're usually on set every day for like 1 to 3 months. Audiobooks, I'm sorry, animation and video games and stuff, those could stretch out for over a year or more, but be like 1 hour sessions here and there. It's a very bizarre process, but it's really fun because you get to keep going in. And sometimes with animation, you'll go in and you'll record your lines with no visuals. And then the next time you come back, the animators have animated some stuff and you can see like the rough animation of it. And it's like, oh, like that's like a thing now. It like has a face and there's my voice. And they just need, little pickups here and there. And a pickup is like when you go back and you re-record a previous line, or maybe they missed a line. And so they want to just go back in and kind of fill out what's already there.
I'm a big movie buff. Those, movies are my thing. And, I'm 24 and I still love animated cartoon movies like I'm 6. Like, and it's crazy because back in the day, like when they were first making, when Steve Jobs signed on to Pixar and they created Toy Story, they were all drawing that out by hand. And it was taking, and the first computers were, but you got to think the computers back in the day weren't the computers we have now. I'm pretty sure they had okay technology, but you can probably make a short animated film within 6 months with the technology we have now. But when they were first making the first Toy Story, I think they started it in like 89 and then it didn't come out to like 95. And then it's just, it's crazy because it takes so long to make an animated movie. And I always get disappointed when when the animated movie that they've took 4 or 5 years to do is just total crapola. Like when it's not anything like terrible at all. Like, so that leads to the question that I have, which is, I, on the podcast, I do, I watched all the Disney princess movies that I'd never seen. And I watched, recently all the DreamWorks. Like I was able to watch them all. And I figured out what probably my favorite animated movie of all time is. And I wonder, what is yours as being a professional voice actor?
My favorite animated movie of all time? That's such high pressure.
It's this hard.
I mean, I can tell you what my favorite ones. So we watch Encanto on repeat in this home because my son loves Encanto, but also I love the music of Encanto. Lin-Manuel is amazing. But I think Moana is one of my all-time favorite animated movies. And one of the reasons I absolutely love it is that there is no romantic storyline. There is no romance in that movie at all. It is not about her finding love or finding romantic love. And I loved that. And it was so like jarring to me to realize how many of the movies I grew up with centered just around that storyline of like, you're a girl, find a man and be happy. It's like, okay, but like there are other things that we can aspire to be too. And as a kid, my favorite Disney movie was Aladdin, and the second was Lion King. And I think I liked both of those movies because, like Lion King, because it's a male lead, doesn't really center around the romantic story. There is that romance in there, but it's not really the main storyline. And Aladdin, Jasmine is like the most like possessed of the Disney princesses from my age. And So I think I really connected with that and like her stubbornness and like determination to do what she wanted and be the person that she wanted to be, even though ultimately she did like end up with the prince or whatever. But she was a stronger female role model than a lot of the other Disney princesses of that era. So I would say those are the three that had the biggest impact. Of course, you mentioned Toy Story. I was always Andy's age when the movies came out. Like when the first movie came out, I was that age for Andy. And then the next one, and then the year I was going to college was the year that's Toy Story 3, right? Toy Story 3 came out. And I like bawled in the movie theater because it was like my childhood, watching my childhood in front of me on screen. So that one will always hold a special place in my heart too.
Here's an unpopular opinion about Toy Story. I find Toy Story 4 was not needed. I feel Toy Story 4 was just a money grab. They knew they could make billions of dollars on Toy Story 4, so they did. Because if you're going to end the story at Toy Story 4, what was the point of having Toy Story 3? Like, that was the perfect ending to give the toys to Bonnie, live happily ever after. 4 was just Woody saying, oh, you know what? That was a bunch of bullshit. I'm just going to stay. I'm going to get lost at this park. I'm going to help Lost Toys, which made no sense at all for how they wanted the fairy tale ending for the third one.
Right. I never even saw Toy Story 4. I don't think I even knew there was a Toy Story 4 until about 2 weeks ago. I was like, wait, they made a fourth one? I thought like they tied it up so beautifully in Toy Story 3.
See, what I wish they would have done with the fourth toy, if they had to, they could have made it like a small series on Disney Plus. Like, I think they're doing it great with like Monsters Incorporated, where I don't think we needed Monsters University. I thought that was kind of, I didn't care about that because you wanted to see what happened at the end of Monsters Incorporated with Boo, Sully seeing her for the last time, and you're like, oh my goodness, it's like The Incredibles when they left off on that cliffhanger, and then the second one turned out to be just a big stinker. And then I felt the same for Monsters Incorporated. I was like, why I don't care how they got started. If you're going to show that you can do that whole storyline in 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. You can do the whole storyline. I don't think we needed a whole movie, but that's a long answer to my own question, which is I think the greatest animated movie is Toy Story for Pixar. But I think Lion King, for me, is that S tier top standard. And then you have to go probably Shrek. Shrek was just such Shrek, not the first Shrek, Shrek 2. I feel Shrek 2.
Really?
I feel Shrek 2 is probably one of the most amazing animated movies to ever be created. Think about it. They took this story of an ogre, right? I don't even know if this was a real book or whatever, but they took it and they said, okay, we're going to have these stories. We're going to have Pinocchio in it. We're going to have a dragon, which I think was a brilliant move on their part. I think it was like, oh, so we're seeing Pinocchio, we're seeing the Three Little Pigs, all these stories, from like Mother Goose or whoever, we put into this movie, and it was like brilliant. Like they did a play on Ghostbusters with the gingerbread man at the end of it. And I was like, but it's a toss up for those three that for me are like really hard to judge. But Moana was an excellent movie. And
it was.
Don't really expect The Rock to be a voice actor, but he kind of kicked it out of the park, especially with that You're Welcome song. That song is the jam. Like you listen to it, you're jamming with it,
So I love his Instagram presence because his daughter's so cute. Have you ever seen, she loves Moana, but she doesn't understand that like daddy is Maui, like that he voiced Maui. So she like tells him to stop singing along with it when it's on because she wants to hear Maui sing it. And he's like, that's me. But she doesn't get it yet because she's too little.
But if you would think about it, take movies that take years to be made and, they have, I like using Madagascar for an example because I think the zebra looks just like Chris Rock. Like,
Yeah.
because they make the characters in the movie look like, try to at least make the characters look like the voice actors.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking at it, The Rock looks nothing like Maui, or Maui looks nothing like The Rock. Like, it's just like a whole different interpretation. So maybe if it did look like The Rock, maybe she would think, oh, maybe that is Dad. But I have a almost 3-year-old nephew, and he couldn't tell the difference between Lightning McQueen and whoever else, Owen Wilson's voice. It's like he can't tell the difference, which is crazy to me.
Right. Yeah. No, it's so funny. It's cool though, and when you talk about them making it look like you, so sometimes what they'll do is they'll like I've had this a couple times where they're actually, when you're doing the voice of something, they're recording you like visually, and or maybe even have like a headset on you so that they can track your facial expressions. It helps the animators, and I thought that was so cool because, especially as also being an on-camera actor, sometimes it's like, oh, like people don't think of voiceover acting as acting, but I'm like, you are acting. Like, this is 100% acting. And sometimes you even are acting with your face, and it's important, not just for getting the right sound and making it sound authentic, but literally because the animators are using that to help them in the animation process. I was like, that's so cool.
It's like when they made that Rango movie. Remember that crappy movie about the lizard with Johnny Depp? I watched behind the scenes of it, and like Johnny Depp is literally acting out the entire movie, and they were using that, and they sculpted that of Johnny Depp and put it in the movie. It was one of the most impressive things I've probably ever seen for a movie. It was crazy, except for knowing the fact that Titanic was created in a swimming pool on a lot.
Yeah. I love watching the behind the scenes of Titanic. It's so incredible. And how much of like everything falling apart in the disaster was actually like real. Not real, but you know what I mean? Like, was not done in post with like editing tricks, but like they actually had things falling over and falling apart on set. And I was just like, oh, this is so cool.
Yeah, it was crazy to see they made a little replica of the Titanic, and they were filming that breaking, and they were doing it manually, and it was like, oh wow, and then they blew it up on the screen. It was crazy. But I have a question for you about the Titanic. Answer me honestly. Was there enough room on that door?
Yes, there was enough room. Why did she move over? Come on, Rose.
Because I have asked that, and I've asked that, and people go, oh, but it was a better ending. How? How was it a better ending that he died?
Yeah.
What was more of a sweet love story would be they lived, he got her off. He was the underdog in the movie the entire time. He's a poor white dude that nobody gave a crap about. He fell in love with the rich chick. They fell in love. They lived happily ever after. How is that a better love story than he died and she kept his love on the inside? That made no sense. I was like, James Cameron, you created Avatar, and you give us this.
It's a tragedy, though. He has to die. I mean, there was room, let's be honest. But I gotta stand up for Titanic here. It's a classic love tragedy. And so they couldn't end up together. But great movie. And yes, they definitely both could have lived. Although I will say, to be fair, there was room on the door, but would the door have sunk with both of them on it? I think it's less about the amount of space and more about the amount of weight, because they did try to, like, he did try to get on, and remember, it kept sinking. So I think it's less about the room and more about the weight on the door that was the issue.
I honestly, I don't think I've ever seen the movie fully, like, because I tried to, but then it was just, it was dragged out to, like, I think a 3-hour movie for me is a little long. Like, I went and saw the new Batman, and I was like, 3 hours is a little long. You could take some stuff out. Same thing with any 3-hour movie. It's like, you can't just cut this down to 2 hours and 25 minutes. We don't care about like the end scene of the Titanic where, they Jack supposedly stole the whatever it was and they had him handcuffed to the thing.
Mhm.
You could have cut that out or cut it down at least. You don't need a lot of stuff for a 3-hour movie. I say all that to say I haven't seen it fully, so I can't really say for the door. I just see what social media is saying about there's enough room on the door.
Yeah, no, it's a widely debated controversy. But oh, I just had something to say about Titanic and it's gone. Never mind.
I have another controversial take for you. Have you ever seen Friends before I ask this?
Yes.
Okay. Were Ross and Rachel on a break? That's the controversial question I love talking about.
I whether or not they were on a break, I think Ross was in the wrong. Personally, it was like an hour later and they weren't really on, like, it wasn't like they had this adult conversation where they were like, we're gonna take a break, we can see other people. Like, there was no agreement. They had an argument, and sure, there was kind of like the we should take a break conversation, but like, don't you think you need to have a like longer, like, legitimate conversation with someone you've been in a relationship with before you just like assume that you can go sleep with other people? Come on, Ross. Like, yes, but he was wrong in that. I'm fully team Rachel on that one.
I'm going to take up for my boy Ross here, though I do think he was. I do think he was in the wrong because it was just such. He did it to get back at her because if I remember, she had said, she was like, I think we should just see other people or something along those lines that would have said, oh, we're broken up. But yes, was he in the wrong? Absolutely. But I do think they were on a break. Like you said, whether or not they were on a break, Ross was in the wrong, but I understand why he would have assumed they were on a break, if that makes sense.
I can understand why he would say we're on a break. I can't understand why he would go and sleep with somebody like 30 minutes later. And why he kept like insisting that they were on it. Like, he couldn't admit that he did something wrong for so much longer in the series. If he had just been able to admit that he did something wrong, then like, well, then we wouldn't have had a 10-season show. So, but oh well.
Matthew Perry is, I'm a big book reader. Obviously you are as well. You do audiobooks. But Matthew Perry, who played Chandler on the show, is releasing like a tell-all memoir. And he's like, and he goes, what people say about Friends is like not true. Like, I remember watching the reunion, besides my thoughts on the crappy reunion Friends did, but they were all talking about how, they still talk to everybody every day. And then Matthew Perry supposedly made a joke and goes, nobody calls me. And everybody was laughing. And he goes, no, I have not talked to anybody in probably 8-9 years. And they're all just trying to fake this friendship. And he got paid I think he got like $8 million book deal, got paid $8 million to write a tell-all memoir. And I'm like, I don't want to read it because it's going to ruin one of my favorite series, but I got to read it.
That sounds really, I'm excited to hear that. Did you ever, are you a Princess Bride fan?
I saw it for the first time about 8 or 9 months ago. And I've watched it 2 or 3 times since then. I loved it so much. Okay. But I didn't think I didn't think I would like it because it's medieval times, which I enjoy, but it's also medieval fantasy, which can go either way for me. But yes, I watched it a few months ago and really thoroughly enjoyed it.
So it's like my all-time favorite movie. Deeply steeped in nostalgia for me. Like, as a kid, any day I was homesick from school, I would watch Princess Bride. Same with my brother. It was our movie that raised us, basically. And the actor who plays Wesley, he wrote a memoir about the experience of shooting The Princess Bride, and it was awesome just to hear all the behind the scenes stories about like what people were like on set, and even before they were on set, like in the development, like reading the script process and everything. Oh, it was so cool. So I love those behind the scene stories, especially when they're focused on a specific project where you can be like, I saw that project and now I'm hearing all the other things that happened that nobody ever saw.
I love that too. And I get irritated. Like I read Will Smith's book, right? I'm a giant Will Smith fan. Watch every movie he comes out with, and you know, one of my favorite sitcoms. I am one of those 24-year-olds that is so old school because when I was growing up, because I was born 98, January of 98. So when I was growing up, we didn't have cable TV until years later. So like I was watching like the Transformers show from the early 90s, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it would come like used to have this channel and it would have Full House and Fresh Prince and Friends and that's how I watched the 90s sitcom show I had never seen before, and I just fell in love, and those were my favorite types of shows, that 90s sitcoms, and Fresh Prince being probably top three. I mean, you can watch every episode and still laugh just at Will's character is hilarious. And I was like, oh man, I've got to read Will Smith's book. I can't wait to hear what he's going to say about Fresh Prince. There was literally like 3.5 pages of just, and it was nothing. And I'm like,
oh no.
And I said, what are we doing? Like, I wanted to hear his take on the Aunt Vivian situation, how they changed, Aunt Viv coming out. I wanted to hear, and you didn't get to see really anything. And it was like, that could be some of the reasons that people wanted to read his book, but they didn't really get any type of inside of it. And, right. It's like I'm reading Josh Peck's book. I grew up with Nickelodeon as well, and didn't really give too much insight on Drake and Josh. And I was like, what are we doing? This is what people want to hear. It's weird once it comes to tell-all memoirs, because you're like, what are they going to tell all of, and what are they going to hide secret of?
Right. Yeah. I read the Anna Kendrick memoir, and the Jenna Fisher's memoirs. And they didn't have I really liked the memoirs, but they didn't go into super nitty gritty details about any one project. It was more about their journey as an actor, which was cool to hear more about the before the project, before The Office for Jenna Fisher, and Anna Kendrick before all of her big movie deals and stuff. Also, Anna Kendrick is from the next town over from me, so I have a special little connection with that. But yeah, I love when they get really really focused on a single project, because then you can relate to it more if you know that project really well. You feel like you're in the know.
No, I agree, because it's there's always sometimes it's different for actors, but I'm going to say this, and a lot of people are not going to like me for it, but you always take a role, and there's always probably this possibility of, I could be known just as this one role. There's probably always that possibility. So why do you get irritated when you're only known as that one role? I understand you got into the industry to act and play different characters, and that's kind of where Steve Carell, he's always going, no matter how big of a movie star he is, he's giant. He's always going to be known as Michael Scott. He always. Mm-hmm. And if he writes a book and he only has a chapter about The Office and just very vaguely shares his life about it, I feel that could be a letdown and an upset for some people, because it's if Alfonso Ribeiro Carlton from Fresh Prince released a book and he never talked about Fresh Prince, just his life, being known as that one character, and he never mentioned it. That's just but you have to give the people what they want. And I think a lot of people can't do that because they're stuck in the mind frame of, I'm just this one character when I got into the industry to be multiple characters. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm not in the movie genre, the voiceover, but it's just that always seems very irritating to me,
that people have get annoyed with being known for just one thing. I can see both sides of it.
Me too.
As an actor, I can appreciate that if you if you feel like you're stuck in that one role because you did it really well and for so long that's the only thing people can see you as, I can see how that could be frustrating. But at the same time, like, but that's what a lot of actors are working towards, is like getting that one really memorable role that then gives you, in most of the cases, like where people are known for a role that they did, they made a lot of money doing it. And like, okay, if you don't want to be known for that anymore, then like make more movies. Like you can be a producer and make movies that tell the stories that you want to tell. And Steve Carell, yes, will always be known as Michael Scott, but he didn't get pigeonholed into that type of role forever. He does drama beautifully, and he's just such a well-rounded actor.
There was one movie he did. Oh my God. It was, I'm blanking on the movie. But it was where he was.
Lost you, I think.
Oh, can you hear me? Okay, cool.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. Okay. What I was saying was, he played in this movie, Marwan, something like that, where he was like this veteran and he had like mental issues. That was brilliantly done. And I was listening to, I think Jenna Fisher has a podcast about The Office, and she was saying that
Office Ladies,
Office
with
Ladies.
her and Angela Kinsley.
Yes, yeah. Angela Kinsley. And she was like, Steve Carell's not funny off camera. He's serious. He's only funny when he has to be. And I'm like, that is very sad to figure out, because Michael Scott is just like so funny. Like, you know, when Scott's tots happened on The Office and you're like, you feel so bad for
What
him.
episode I can't watch.
And then the dinner party when
dinner party is so great.
What do you think, in your personal opinion, is the greatest episode of The Office?
I mean, dinner party is brilliant in its awkwardness and like, so uncomfortable. We watch The Office pretty much on repeat in this house. Like, it just kind of is our background noise that we cycle through. And so we have this conversation all the time, and dinner party always comes up on top. But we have our top mentions for openers too. Obviously, Kevin's chili is like a top opener. Asian Jim is a top opener.
The funniest thing about Kevin's chili is just the face he makes. Like when he drops it, he looks like a dog that's just like they took his bone away.
It's kind of heartbreaking. I actually find that opener kind of sad, because it's like, it's Kevin and the poor guy never has anything going for him, and this is like his thing. It's like the one thing he can do. Oh, poor Kevin.
For me, one of the funniest one-liners Michael Scott ever did, I can't remember who it was. I mean, God, there's like 200 episodes of The Office, but they were on the roof of the building, and they were going to jump off, and they're like, don't jump off. And you know, he looks already. What are we gonna do, Mike Scott? Jump! Like for me, I was like, that kills me. Like also where there's the fire alarm goes off, and Michael Scott pushes all the people out of the way, like, bitch, move! I'm gonna save myself. It's always the slightest things, the voice things that he does, or just even the first episode of The Office. A lot of people are like, I can't get through the first episode. You have to get through the first season and a half to actually enjoy it. But I think the first episode of The Office is so memorable for me because he has that line where they go, who are your heroes? And he goes, you know, Abraham Lincoln, probably Jesus Christ. Like, who would say Jesus Christ is like, it's something funny that you would not expect to be funny, but it just turned out to kick it out of the park. And you realize that show was improvised a lot.
Oh yeah. And you can see, if you watch like the background characters, sometimes they're trying so hard not to lose it.
like John Krasinski.
And I just imagine, oh my gosh, yes. His looks at camera, though, brilliant. Like, his eye work in that is so good. You can just like, he communicates so well with just a look.
And it's crazy about John Krasinski is he kind of left The Office, which is pure comedy, instead of going to drama, he went to freaking horror movies and created one of the greatest horror movies probably of all time. One of the greatest
Mm-hmm.
plot lines. It was, if the movie would have sucked, it would have been like, oh, he was a failed horror movie creator. But the fact that it was such an excellent plot point and the movie was fantastic, just created this whole new realm for John Krasinski. I mean, he got, what was it, Jack Reacher or whoever he plays
Jack
on
Ryan.
Jack Ryan
Yeah.
on Amazon, and he's brilliant in that as well. I love to see the people that go from comedy or go from action and try something new, and it actually like kicks it out of the park, like Steve Carell, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been meaning to see, have you seen Beautiful Boy yet? Or
Yes.
I mean, yeah, it's been out for years, but
Yes.
I've been wanting to see it for so long, and I just there's always another thing that's above it. But I've seen, I mean, in the trailer alone, he can bring me to tears, and I'm like, oh, this movie is going to kill me.
That is, I don't have a kid, so I can't necessarily get on the sadness factor of, your kids on, because I don't understand that love language,
Mm-hmm.
But the movie is effing rough. Like,
Yeah.
it is, and you're looking at this guy and you're like, this guy, last night I was watching The Office and he was making me cry laughing. Now he's making me cry just from, the story is sad, but I've watched enough movies to realize that you can get emotional just by one person's performance in a movie. Like with Tom Holland's new Spider-Man movie, I get emotional just thinking that this dude is blowing up right in front of your face,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually, so Beautiful Boy is based on a memoir, and
I've read it.
The son, you have?
Mhm.
So the son also wrote a memoir. Have you read that one?
Mm-mm.
Tweak?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so the son wrote a memoir as well called Tweak. And I read that to get ready for a role because I was playing a recovering addict in a film earlier, like fall last year or whatever. And so I read Tweak to like understand, because that's not a world that I've ever been part of or a struggle that I've ever personally had. And the memoir is very interesting in this. I mean, it's fascinating from a like understanding what he was going through and like his thought process and all of that, but he also has a very unique voice. Like it is almost kind of tweaky in that way. It's so good though. I recommend it. I haven't read Beautiful Boy because I wanted to read Tweak first so that I got the son's point of view. And then I can't decide. You've seen both. So would you recommend reading the memoir or watch the movie, or the other way around? Like what order would you recommend?
I didn't really care for the book. I'll be honest.
Okay.
I didn't know there was a book. I just thought it was a movie that was fake or, made up, and then it revealed it was a true story. But I can't say, from firsthand account to read the book or watch the movie. I was just not a fan because I am so picky when it comes to books. Like I only read I read history and memoirs. That's all I read. Like, because I feel if I read a book, I have to learn something. If I want to watch fantasy, I'm going to watch TV or I'm going to watch Marvel or something like that. So like the book to me was just dark. Like the dad decided to snort cocaine and do the drugs that his son was doing just to see what he was feeling. And it was like, okay, this is kind of, I think I got 3/4 of the way through the book and I just put it down. It kept giving me, like I just kept getting a bad mood. So like when I first watched Ozark, I could not watch the second season because it put me in such a bad mood because I was like, I can't.
I love Ozark.
Oh my goodness. Ozark is, I'm going to say this right now. Ozark is probably one of the greatest TV shows to ever be made on Netflix because I have an epiphany with Netflix. Netflix's movies suck, but they are terrible. But for some reason, they can make some great TV shows. I don't know what their philosophy is, what they're doing different, But man, Ozark is and I get this conversation every podcast because everybody loves Ozark so much. But I'm hoping season 4 part 2 is going to live up to the hype because that comes out next month. Like I'm not watching it because it's hard to watch TV shows for me because I have a certain taste and some stuff just like doesn't catch my eye. Like I'm like, there's nothing to watch, but I'm waiting for anxiously stressing out, waiting for Ozark part 4 part 2 of season 4. Because I just wonder what happens. Like, does Marty does he die? Is it just a dream? What happens? And it was a brilliant turn for me when their youngest son. Spoiler alert: when the youngest son started selling and moving money and laundering, I was like, this is brilliant. That was amazing to me.
I know. I'm the thing I like about Ozarks is it takes all the stress that I have in my life and makes it seem inconsequential because at least the cartel's not after me.
Oh my God, I stress out just watching the show because Marty or Jason Bateman will get into one thing, will get out of it, has a day of I can breathe, and then boom. And it's like I would go off and off myself. I mean, that first couple of weeks, I would have off myself quick. No, there's no doubt about it. But then
it's so true. I could never handle.
But then you think this is just a TV show. Isn't it so amazing how they can make you feel, holy shit, this is happening in Missouri? Like, is this actually going on? And it's like, no, it's a TV show. It's amazing to me.
Yeah, I love that show. I am eagerly awaiting part 2 of season 4 as well. I was kind of mad when I found out that they split it because I was like, oh, the last season's out, like, yay! And then I was like, wait, part 1? Come on, man. Like, I was ready to just binge this whole last season.
I get irritated because a lot of shows or a lot of streaming services are now putting out one episode a week, which I get irritated at because I'm like, well, now I have to wait. But then I enjoy the fact that it's Sunday or it's Tuesday or random day. Oh my God, it's time to watch, with Peacemaker. HBO did that with Peacemaker with John Cena. And it was always, oh my God, is it Friday yet? Is it Friday yet? And when Friday happened, it was like, as soon as I woke up, I have to watch Peace. Like, I don't enjoy it, but I do enjoy it to a certain extent.
Yep. The delayed satisfaction of it. I feel that way with Handmaid's Tale. They release one episode a week typically too.
Well, look, Corrie, we've done over an hour. So kind of as we wind down here, we're trying to get you off here as quick as possible. If you had one dream voice acting role to get, what would be the one dream that you're like, okay, I can retire or I can die now?
I would love to have a lead part in like a Pixar movie. That would have a very special place in my heart, especially if then my kids like watched that movie and loved it. I would be like, oh, like I'm complete.
Or you could have that stupid Turning Red movie. Have you seen that?
No.
Let me tell you, I am for. Okay, it's kind of a hit and miss for me because if you have a kid movie, sure, you want to have a little bit of adult theme because who's taking the kids to watch the movies, right?
Right.
I feel they went too far with Turning Red. They brought tampons and pads into the movie, and I'm like, well, wait a sec. This movie is for 4 and 5-year-olds. Are they really understanding what this is about? And it was kind of like, I was like,
is that the one where she turns into a panda?
Yeah.
Like the red panda?
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't seen it, but I know what one you're talking about now.
Yeah. And I got probably 45 minutes into it and I turned it off because for me, it wasn't a good story. But it was also the fact of I'm watching a kid's show and it's for like teenagers, like for 13, 14-year-olds. Like it was crazy to me to see that they were bringing tampons and showing them in a Disney Pixar movie, which I guess you want stuff to age, but it's just the process of getting that phase out, I guess.
Gotcha. Well, having not seen it, I'll play devil's advocate and say I think that's pretty cool to kind of like normalize that stuff. It's
Right,
so
right.
it's for so long it's been so taboo, and you say it's for 13, 14-year-olds, but girls get their period before that. So like,
Okay,
you
I
know,
didn't know.
yeah. So you know, to make little kids, like little, especially little girls or, you know, female identifying, sexually female at birth, feel like normalize that and see it on screen where it's never talked about in that kind of world before. Maybe that's actually really revolutionary. But again, I haven't seen it, so I'm just speaking to the concept of showing those things to kids, like as they're
Yeah.
getting to the age. Obviously, not like my 15-month-old son. It's not going to know what that is. But if an 8, 9-year-old little girl is seeing that, and it's something that she's going to deal with soon if she isn't already, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's, you know, girls are now having period parties. You heard about that?
Hmm.
That is disgusting. They'll have like red velvet cake, and I'm like, oh, what are we doing here? But
Well, it's certainly not for you.
absolutely not. But look, Corrie, I think I'm thankful for the hour and plus you gave me. So right now, take as much time as you need and kind of give any kind of information you want out there, people's social media, any kind of upcoming things you have going on. All the floor is yours. As
Sure.
much time as you need.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, I'd love to connect with anybody on social media. I'm mostly on Instagram, creating with Corrie, and Corrie is spelled Corrie. So come on over and join me there. I share a lot of like tips and tricks about acting and voiceover work. So if you're at all interested in what that world is like, feel free to DM me with any questions. I have resources too in my bio on Instagram. And my website is just CorrieLegge.com. So feel free to reach out to me that way too.
Look, Corey, again, I thank you. We're gonna set something up here in the near future. We're gonna do this again because we only had limited time, and we're gonna do this longer because we can. There are certain people that you can have a conversation with and know you can get along with, and I hope we treated you well here on the podcast. So
Absolutely.